Hello friends, I am Anton. I want to tell you a story. Maybe you've experienced this. This story indeed demonstrates that time is actually an illusion, that it is a playful illusion, so to speak, in fact. And sometimes certain energetic beings or angels come to us, whether in dreams, in reality, in meditation, or in some special state. And then it might turn out, maybe not always in this life, but perhaps in the next, that it was me, this being, who came to my past self to help my past version, or even the version before that, in the past, present, and future, to assist and support in various ways. Such cases may not be immediately noticeable and may not happen very quickly, because it might take many lifetimes for you to become more aware and energetically stronger. To communicate with oneself with the past like a pure almighty angel or some kind of mentor. Sometimes, of course, these are certain mentors, as I have come to understand, other souls or soulmates or the higher self. And sometimes, well, what is the higher self? That's also a question. It can be interpreted in different ways. On one hand, it's me and my best versions having gone through all my lessons. Well, it's like I'm from the future. And on the other hand, this is indeed my truly magnificent soul beyond time, truly remarkable. Through regressions and sessions of communication with the higher self, each person must understand for themselves what the higher self means to them. I think this perception will be very unique for everyone. Because each of us, as I see it, is unique and one of a kind, and perception is also unique for everyone. So there you go. And once, back in 2014, I was sitting quietly and peacefully and meditating again. I turned on meditative music. It was the music of Karunesh. Karunesh is such an artist. When I turned it on for the first time, by the way, I already felt like I had heard it before, as if it was very familiar, even though it was my first time playing it. And that is not a coincidence either. And when I meditated to this music in a special state of purity and clarity, expanded perception and awareness, where the ego was completely absent, I minimized all thoughts, leveled them, or, let's say, I was bigger than these thoughts. And then the thoughts seemed small and manageable. The mind became more manageable as I grew larger, like a big cloud, pure, white, like the energy of the source. Well, I have done such meditations. There are different variations, and I have experimented with all of them. During a meditation, listening to this music by Karunesh, I think it was through headphones, I suddenly remembered, or an unexpected image came to me. I saw myself as a little boy, around 5 or 6 years old, at the summer house. I saw myself from above, looking at that boy walking down the road from the gate to the bathhouse. I was above the bathhouse, looking down at myself, and listening to this music by Karunesh. In the meditation, I remembered myself walking from those gates, and suddenly I saw a bright light above the bathhouse, which started looking at me. This light came and began to look at me like some kind of angel. I saw this angel like in the light. But it's not that an angel is like an angel, it's like a luminous consciousness, some big, pure, strong soul, bright, that I didn't know who it was, what it was, how to call it. I just noticed it as a little boy. I remembered it when I was meditating and looking at myself from that point. So I was walking from the gate, saw this angel, looked at it for maybe 10 seconds or so, and then I went on into the house. That is, maybe I wasn't used to interacting so frequently at that age, or rather, I had indeed perhaps unlearned from infancy to interact so often with such energetic beings. So he didn't stay long and didn't know how to communicate with him, especially since this angel only made music-like sounds. He didn't speak. He was in silence. And I went further. And there, in that state, in 2014, when I was meditating as an adult, I also saw this, that he stood there, looked at me, remembered all of it. I had an insight. And he went further, did not continue to communicate with me. And then something indeed happened that was truly much more than just déjà vu, actually. But it's similar to the feeling when I remembered that. And indeed, I first heard this music by Karunesh when I was 5 years old, but back then, Karunesh, what year was it? The late 80s or early 90s, I don't remember. I might have been 6 years old, I don't remember. Back then, he hadn't composed that music yet. In those years, he wrote these tracks, let's say closer to the 2000s. And I couldn't, being a little boy as a child, hear it if a portal from the future hadn't opened for me when Karunesh composed these tracks. So, when I first listened to Karunesh in 2010, or rather in 2012, I recognized this melody, even though it was the first time I played it. Because when I was meditating, it turns out that in the future, While meditating with this music, I was already communicating with myself as a little boy, who also, through a portal, through me, well, you get it, right? I heard that music for the first time back then, and I had this realization, and I am me, and I am that me. And I remembered how I wondered who this angel with such beautiful music was, hanging over the bathhouse like a bright, harmonious light, silently watching me. And then I didn't know it was me from the future, especially since he was silent. I was silent, looking at myself from above, a little boy from 2014. I was both in the body and out of the body at the same time. That is, I didn't notice my body when I was sitting in that meditation in 2014. And I didn't want to communicate with my past self. It's like my subconscious part gave me this experience on its own. I absolutely needed to go through it. My ego, my mind didn't plan it. The one who plans within me, he did not plan this. It was just a mind-blowing realization, very sharp and unexpected. It was akin to a large, strong, sharp, unexpected déjà vu. Only the sensations were a bit different. Everything came together, everything aligned. I realized that the angel I suddenly noticed when I was walking on two threads above in the bright light was actually myself now. Now, I feel more meditative and more energetically strong. You could say that I have reached a state of inner peace and heightened energy levels, which makes me feel incredibly balanced and centered. Back then, in my childhood, I was just a boy, I was just a little bit of an empath, I noticed some things, but I didn't meditate intentionally or work with such practices. And the more I grew up, the more I worked on it and uncovered potentials, revealing some abilities, including this one. And this was indeed the most vivid instance of truly communicating with another time, with another version of myself, in a way. In another time, with another version of myself. There were other instances too, I can't recall all of them right away, some were less noticeable. When I was talking to someone, I wondered who it was. And it turned out it was myself in another version. Or let's say, I am from the next life, then sometimes perhaps... It seems that in meditation, when I am in a meditative state, it is clearly visible what is true and what is false. When you come out of meditation, I notice that some doubts start to appear. Was it really true, what I considered to be true in that special state? In these special states, I sometimes see that I am interacting and communicating with a certain luminous being who looks a bit like me, but has either gone through all my lessons or doesn't have them. And then I clearly begin to gradually realize in meditation, not immediately, that this is me 3 lives ahead or 1 life ahead, when I have already stopped incarnating in matter altogether, that is, I have already become an ascended master, you could say, and now I am communicating with myself in the present, who has not yet reached this level of purity of karma, purity of awareness and abilities. In controlling his mind and ego, he has not yet arrived. But the one, I am the master, who controls all his aspects in the world and in total, so to speak, acceptance, he can do everything but does not want much. He can do everything but does not want much. He has no desire, that's the kind of person I am, and I saw it. It was in another imitation, in another situation. But then a clear understanding came that it was also me, and I would play that role later. A role to communicate with you today. There were moments like that too, and strangely enough, that version of me, who you could say is a future ascended master, which we all, who are on the spiritual path, will probably become sooner or later, masters of all our aspects. Lords who may not incarnate in dense matter if they do not wish to, and so on. And this Lord is me from the future, as it were. Was not interested in making sure that I absolutely, positively, and undoubtedly knew it was myself. It didn't matter to him. What was important to him was to give me something, more precisely, to support. Support, the word support comes to mind, and to help maintain the stability of high vibrations. So now I have a question, and indeed a lack of stability in meditations in special states of moral purity, purity of thoughts, and also control of my ego as well. There is also the question of stability. Well, it's getting better and better, and that I already has complete effortless stability of high pure thoughts and vibrations. Well, that's one way to put it in words. In that version of myself, of course, at some point I will want to support my present self who wants to develop this, and this needs to be maintained, as I understand it, not constantly, but sometimes. Just when I might be losing hope that I can handle it myself, or when I get distracted from the main thing to the secondary to the material, I need to be reminded of the main thing. And who will be doing it? Probably, most often, it will be me. In this state of meditation, there is no doubt about what is what, about what is really happening. And when I came out of that state, some doubts gradually appeared. And then those doubts only dissipated because the mind turns on, logical thinking turns on, and doubts can appear immediately or not immediately. And then I just read Robert Monroe and listened to someone else about this and realized that yes, it does happen after all. And in meditations in special states, when the mind disappears or becomes non-influential, lulled, then you clearly know, without doubt, without questions, what is what and what this process is. And it's very interesting, if you read the books of Robert Monroe, he also encountered what he called a rational being. A rational being is like an ascended master, or as in the USA, but it turned out he was from the future. And he also didn't understand it right away, not immediately, and even very much not immediately, this Robert Monroe out of body, who traveled, and he had a mentor there who guided him, helped him, and only later did resembling say that, well, I mean, it helped him realize that it was himself from the future. But then he disappeared because from that point on, Robert Monroe, in that state, at that level he was in this life, had to achieve that awareness, mastery, and energetic fullness on his own without such a helper, as I could understand it. That's how I understood it. There are also some other masters, people who meditate, who have noticed that they communicate with themselves from the future or the past. They might notice this in one way or another, while some do not notice it at all. However, they still do it. It's just that they are not interested in paying attention to it or recognizing it. They simply do their work. You from the future do your work, and everyone thinks that some kind of energy has just come, and then you will play this role later. That is, it is very interesting, and I of course do not know everything, far from everything, but there are other masters, there are books, there are some videos on YouTube that also talk about this, similar experiences. In general, all of this indeed motivates and inspires one to become the most powerful version of oneself, capable of controlling and summoning everything at will. And this happens effortlessly, as it should be. Indeed, in true reality, time does not exist. There is only the game illusion of time, like the movement of objects, which creates the illusion of time. But this can also be understood differently. This is a very interesting topic, and I think it would be interesting to read if you share any similar experiences in the comments. Well, all the best. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, TV Extra.